It's a wonderful day in the homiehood, a wonderful day for a homie. Won't you be my homie to Taro? Today is March 15th, the Ides of March. Are we crossing the Rubicon or not? Probably not, but we are going to dig into the Canadian news just like we do every weekday. The Liberals are back at it again with the filibustering as they block opposition efforts to call PM's Chief of Staff, Katie Telford, over Beijing election interference. Now, this is a bit of a strange look. I can't really understand. I don't can't really say that I understand why they're doing this because I think it's kind of making them look guilty because they don't want to talk about anything. However, I do want to give a bit of benefit of the doubt because they are talking about secrets and confidential information, and I do wonder that if they were sitting on something and that was revealed, it might not give the whole picture, right? As someone in chat is saying here, why are the Liberals doing this? It just looks horrible and reinforces how some view Trudeau. Yes, it's absolutely true. It is feeding into the Trudeau enemies, like it's giving the attacks on the Liberals right now a lot of ammunition. So Liberal MPs extended a filibuster for a fourth day. Oh my God, that's a lot about talking about nothing. If you don't know, filibustering is when you just talk and talk and talk, and you never really kind of get to the heart of the issue. So that's what they're doing. To block the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Katie Telford, from testifying before a Commons Committee studying China's election interference, with some arguing that political staff should not be forced to appear before parliamentary committees. MPs on the Procedure and House Affairs Committee met to debate an NDP motion to call Ms. Telford to explain what she and Justin Trudeau knew about Chinese interference in the 2019 and 2021 elections and what they did to stop it. So, of course, we've been following this story as it unfolds. This whole idea of Chinese election interference, we still don't really know or understand it because it is coming from CSIS leaked information. So it's really hard to paint a full picture about what's going on. Is it real? Did it meet the threshold to constitute election interference? Some people say no. And then also, is all of this kind of like xenophobic and coming from a place where Canada is positioning itself as a enemy of China, as our allies in the United States and the UK and Australia have also been positioning themselves. Anyways, Liberal MPs prevented a vote by reading newspaper articles. Wow, that's what I do. Talking about their university days and overseas travel and accusing the opposition of playing political games. Okay, so it sounds like everyone's playing games. I hate when people do this. Like, I can't believe the politicians are doing politics right now. It's like, okay, well, that's kind of the whole thing that y'all do, so it's never a surprise to any of us. Conservative MP Michael Cooper made it seem like, hey, why are they doing this? And it really begs the question, what does the prime minister have to hide? And yeah, that's certainly, when you're filibustering over this, it's certainly going to raise those questions. Liberal MPs have argued that the documents are not a full picture of how national security agencies have handled Chinese interference and that cabinet ministers should be answering questions. Cabinet ministers should be answering questions on this issue and not political staff. Yeah, so I think this is why they're doing it, and certainly there is a concern if there's all this classified information and the only thing that gets out is what the Liberals knew and when they knew it, it will make them look really bad. But meanwhile, there's potentially all of these other classified things that they did do to take action against China, but nobody is allowed to talk about that. So I think that is where all of this is coming from, is that, sure, they've probably done a great many things against China because, let's face it, relationships with Canada and China have weakened under the Trudeau leadership. So they've probably done a great many things, and the only thing that has the potential of getting out is kind of like what they knew, when they knew it, and how it might have benefited China just on this one thing. right? So it's not painting a full picture. And I think that's what liberals are so worried about. Whatever they're trying to protect, they must be calculating it's worth filibustering and not letting it get out there until there's a more full picture. So liberal Anita Van Den Beld led off a filibuster Tuesday, speaking for more than an hour. I think I could. This is one thing I think I could do. I feel qualified to filibuster now that I've been trying to do this talk show for so long. At one point, she said Canadians may want to know what cabinet knew and did to stop Chinese interference, but argued that this information should not be shared with the public. You know who else would like to know that? Miss Vandenbeld asked. China would love to know what we did, what did we know and how did we find that out? And more importantly, the next question, which is what did we do about it? These are not things that can be talked about in public and open forums. Okay? So, of course, as we know, Justin Trudeau has opened 2 closed-door panels with NSICOP and NSIRA. So there are probes going on investigating this. However, they have not named or announced a special rapporteur. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is, of course, using this against Justin Trudeau. What has he got to hide? Yada, yada, yada. And Bloc Québécois leader is saying that there should be an investigation specifically into Justin Trudeau's Montreal riding of Papineau. Now, the end of this article here kind of insinuates that there might be some fishy business about Justin Trudeau's riding, saying that 2/3 of the donations to his campaign came from around 50 donors of Chinese origin and were given in the span of 48 hours. So, is this suspicious? I don't know. The Globe and Mail is like leaving off this article. It's like, tune in next time to find out if that's true or not, or if that has any significance. And what is this whole Chinese origin thing? It's like, well, okay, well, like you could be a Canadian and have Chinese origins. Does that matter? Does that matter? It feels a little bit of a xenophobic ending to me to leave the article off in this way. Now, the Globe and Mail editorial board has kind of released an editorial today about Canada's cult of confidentiality, which is really just calling on this system of information and secrecy to be lifted. Like, can we lift this veil even a little bit? And they're calling in this article specifically to stop treating Canadians like children, as if we can't handle the truth and the full truth and nothing but the truth. So a myriad of Canadian bureaucracies seem to have willingly pledged allegiance to a cult of confidentiality. And to some degree, I think I do agree. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. Like, if we're going to have these stories publicized in our most popular news media, and we're going to leak secrets to the Globe and Mail or Global News or whoever, we should be allowed to have a more full picture. Enough with treating Canadians like children, the editorial board says. The public should not have to approach their governments, their police agencies, or any other public institutions with their hands cupped beseechingly like Oliver Twist, begging for more of the public information that rightfully belongs to them in the first place. And yeah, I think this is especially true of like police. If, like, as we know in our community, there have been people who are like, hey, it would be great if we had access to this data from the police, and the barriers just like went up. There's monetary barriers and time restrictions and all of this nonsense, right? But it's just like, hey, wait, this is our public institution and this data should be made available to the public. Why do we have to pay money to get this info from the police? So Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has been saying things like, when we lean on partisanship around this, we're actually helping them in doing their work of sowing confusion and mistrust, which is in here insinuating that, hey, when we talk about things that should be classified, we're actually helping China, he's talking about in this case. Liberal MP Greg Fergus asked the Deputy Prime Minister of Foreign Affairs, is it possible that unconfirmed and unverified leaks could be in themselves a form of foreign interference? And here basically saying that, hey, talking about these potential things that our government is doing wrong, maybe that is also helping China. So this again seems like politics. It's like, hey, you're not allowed to know what we're doing because that's helping our foreign adversaries. It's like, okay, very kind of weird maneuvering. Even on public spending, lips are zipped. Industry Minister Francois Philippe Champagne has excitedly touted Volkswagen's new battery plant in St. Thomas, Ontario. You know, this is a new developing story over the last couple days, while refusing to say what it will cost taxpayers, citing commercial sensitivity. You know, and this is something I really, really don't like. It's like, oh, you're not even allowed to know this because of commercial sensitivity, saying in an interview that, like, oh, well, it might hurt our business practices and our ability to leverage corporations if you were to know how much this were going to cost taxpayers. So really, really weird. And again, the Globe and Mail here editorial board reiterating that we need to treat our citizens like grown-ups. And we need to strengthen our access to information system, supposedly specifically the mechanism by which citizens can push government towards disclosure. So one other interesting thing I would like to tie in about this election interference, because there is an ongoing election interference happening in Hamilton Center right now, which really to me seems like an op. Ontario by-election stirs controversy as provincial NDP look to hold Hamilton's seat. So this is something that we covered on in a separate video yesterday about NDP candidate Sarah Jama, who is facing calls by Jewish organization B'nai B'rith to step down and apologize for past comments about Israel and support for the BDS movement. Now, I said yesterday, I'm really angry at the Toronto Star. I find myself also angry today at the Globe and Mail for their reporting on this. The race to replace former Ontario NDP, okay, yada, yada, yada. We know this. This is Hamilton Centre, where Andrea Horwath has stepped down, and now Sarah Jama is running. It's an NDP stronghold, and this is basically the best shot that the Liberals, but more likely the Conservatives, have at taking this seat. Coincidentally, you know, there are actual real world consequences to these allegations, which I deem false. So in this new information that I had not reported on yesterday, in a 2021 video now circulating online, Miss Jama speaks about Hamilton police protecting Nazism and targeting Black Muslim Palestinians, and suggests Israel is funding the killing of people globally and locally. Now, I watched the video. Because I'm like, is this true? Is this really true that Sarah Jama is suggesting that Israel is funding the killing of people in Hamilton? Now, that would strike me as conspiracy. That would strike me as a bit anti-Semitic. So I watched the video. And you know what the video says that this article fails to point out is that Sarah Jama is talking about the liberals who do nothing. They're saying it's you know, the liberals and conservatives who fund the police, and it's the liberals who sit idly by and offer more funding to police officers. And then they go on to say it's this inaction and funding of the police that lead to the killing of people globally and locally. It actually has nothing to do with Israel. It's actually just talking about the local police, because that's what's actually important. Is and I assume that video was taken at probably, you know, maybe the height of the BLM movement. So as far as I can tell, there's nothing juicy here. Maybe the juiciest part is that she says that the Hamilton police protect Nazism, and as we know, in Canada, the police do have a history of protecting far-right white supremacist interests. You know, maybe not Nazism specifically, but it's definitely something that we saw trending, especially, let's say, you know, during the convoy. We did see a little bit of that. So I thought this was just like this. Whoever wrote this article kind of just like didn't take the time to watch this video and understand what Sarah Jama was talking about. I sadly am doing, you know, better work than the Toronto Star and the Globe and Mail. Not getting paid shit for it, except for, of course, my lovely supporters in chat and on coffee. So I do appreciate that. So Miss Styles is really being put to the test here. I don't really like what Marit Styles has to say either. She says, I think Sarah is speaking on behalf of a lot of her constituents every day and is known to be a strong advocate against violence and racism. We've all ended up at rallies and stuff where maybe she didn't use the right choice of words. And you know what I say? I say fuck it. I say fuck it. Stand by your candidate. Sarah Jama did use the damn right choice of words. Police do have affiliations with the far right and white supremacists. There's nothing wrong with calling this out and setting the record straight and standing by what is an illegitimate attack. We know that anti-Semitism is used as a guise of social justice rhetoric in order to smear the most progressive candidates. We've seen this over and over and over again. We saw it with Joe Harden in Ottawa, and now we're seeing it as a way for the Conservatives to potentially take this seat. If you want to fight conservatism, then why would you jump on an issue like this? So Michael, I will give Globe and Mail credit because they do offer the other side of this. Michael Burkett, Vice President of the Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East, said the episode amounts to a smear campaign against Miss Jama, and a group called Independent Jewish Voices has also expressed support for Miss Jama. So I'm glad that they at least both sides this. However, I don't think this is actually an issue that you need to both sides. Like, it's because actually the Globe and Mail is scared of also being called anti-Semitic. That's why they need to take this line of reasoning to both sides this issue, because the fear of being labeled anti-Semitic is that strong. And it's really hard to string the nuanced take where you're like, hey, this is being done in bad faith and this is not an example of anti-Semitism. Like, it's not something you need to have opinion about. It is basically like factually true. Like, how is supporting BDS anti-Semitic? It's not, you know? So anyways, Liberal candidate Deirdre Pike sees an opportunity here, and they believe that Miss Jama's comments are hurtful. They say that I do think that the things that she said have clearly been identified as anti-Semitic. Okay, so it's like, all right, tell me you don't know what you're talking about then. And that Jewish people here and beyond have identified that as so, and I stand with them. Now, many people have accused Deirdre Pike of basically being part of this smear campaign, which is opening the door for the Conservative to take this seat. And it's just like a ridiculous claim. Miss Pike was also herself an NDP supporter until 2017. So, here she is right here on the right, pictured with Kathleen Wynne. So, some questions. Like, why has her allegiance changed from the NDP to the Liberals? I don't know. Maybe she's one of those liberals that Sarah Jama was talking about, who is someone who is going to support the police and increase the police funding. I would not be surprised in the least. Somebody who is, through liberalism, enabling fascism. So the last thing I want to talk about today, I know we are a bit over time, but I think this is a great way to round this out, is an opinion piece here in the Globe and Mail. As Ottawa balks at an election interference inquiry, public trust in our democracy is draining away. Now, I want you to think, is this article, are the quotes I'm about to read, are they about China or are they about Israel? The agents of these authoritarian regimes are not passively sitting and waiting for the next election cycle before striking again. Even today, they are probing our political environment to identify and exploit our vulnerabilities and intensify polarization on both the political left and right. Again, is this about China or is this about Israel? I can't tell. These actors seek out and ensnare morally compromised former diplomats, academics, and officials to act as their surrogates in Canada and amplify their narratives. NCICOP has repeatedly warned that the fundamental rights and values of Canadians are threatened by hostile foreign state actors, and that diaspora and ethnocultural communities in Canada are intimidated and exploited in an efforts in efforts to influence Canadian domestic and foreign policies. Again, you think this is for China or Israel? While we may wish to believe that foreign authoritarians would prefer one Canadian political party over another, the truth is that they seek out and exploit issues that have the greatest potential to divide us, regardless of political affiliation. Interesting. There is clear evidence that foreign regimes have manipulated our democratic process to punish candidates who are critical of them. There is little cost to foreign authoritarians to engage in such operations, and no significant consequences to deter them. A nonpartisan inquiry into all foreign interference at all levels of government must be held, and its focus should include foreign influence operations, disinformation, intimidation, transnational repression, and any domestic actors who help facilitate attacks on our democracy. Again, you think this is about China or is this about Israel? Our election laws must be amended to prevent foreign governments and their proxies from manipulating future nomination processes in vulnerable ridings, maybe like Hamilton Center. All right. So, I think you understand the point that I'm getting at here. Is this xenophobic? Is it anti-Semitic to criticize other governments? I don't know. And the language that we use against China is often like, oh, a regime, an authoritarian regime, but we don't take on a similar tone when we talk about Israel, do we? So just some interesting differences that we see here in the media and about how these things are presented, which maybe tell us a bit more about where Canada stands on a world stage. So thank you so much for tuning in to our headlines and hot takes with my homie Tutaro today. We'll be back tomorrow as always. Please tell me in the comments what you think about all of this, whether it's the liberal filibustering or the situation with Sarah Jama in Hamilton Center. I always appreciate your feedback